we need to concentrate on the books that use sanctuary language very overtly, okay? Not just simply echo or allusion, but very covertly using. One of them, of course, is Daniel, where the terms sanctuary itself and animals relating to the sanctuary and sacrifices in the sanctuary are used as symbols and as description. Perhaps the most important is the writings of John. In the gospel, there's special statements that Jesus made about himself or descriptors of Christ in the Gospel of John are all based on sanctuary language, as we will shortly see. Most Christians, when they think of sanctuary in the New Testament, their mind goes to the epistle to the Hebrews. This is just rife with sanctuary language. Turn almost every page, every chapter, and it's all about interpretation of the sanctuary. And we will see what really happens. And then, of course, the author that uses sanctuary language the most in the Bible is John himself in Revelation. Mention of the sanctuary, temple, elements relating pieces of furniture, and so on and so forth. Word pictures that immediately draw our minds to the tabernacle of Moses or the temple of Solomon. All of those are embedded in the 7 promises that Jesus makes to the 7 churches, in the 7 plagues, in the description of heaven itself and God's throne. It's all about the sanctuary. And I contend that when you really understand the sanctuary from the Old Testament, everything that goes with it, from its structural viewpoint, organizational viewpoint, cultic viewpoint, then you understand books like Revelation a lot more clearly. And you see, oh, okay, so this is why Revelation is speaking in this way. So let's begin with a motif that would appear in all of these writings. One of the most important motifs in the sanctuary is the idea of God sitting on his throne. That is why the Ark of the Covenant is such a special piece of furniture in a forbidden space. And that ark has a covering, and we will see its wording, that evokes images of some kind of a throne. And so in the 4 books that we mentioned, we find this idea being played throughout. So on the day of Yom Kippur, when you come into the presence of this God, it's like appearing before a judge. It has that judgment overtones. How? Well, that high priest, when he entered the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur Day, he did not enter there without proper insulation. He actually had to carry censers full of incense that create a virtual smoke or cloud around himself, so that he doesn't come in direct contact with the glory of God, even while performing this amazing piece of ritual. And that incense and everything that happens, the tabernacle would literally fill up with smoke. And at its dedication, the same thing happened. At the dedication of Solomon's temple, the same thing happened. And that smoke seems to create, or smoke or cloud may be a better description, some kind of an insulation suit. Another motif with this, when you come before the throne of God, I never really understood this, by the way, until I came to Thailand. When you come before God, you have to be in as perfect an appearance, life thought, attitude, being as you possibly can. The Israelites were taught this, that you have to be careful. So what happens? If they were not prepared to go through the 1-week rituals to make themselves ready for Yom Kippur, then they were cut off from the camp. It seems that they were literally kept out of the camp during the 24 hours of Yom Kippur. The term yashav is used in relationship to this motif, because yashav, while it can mean to stay, it really means to judge. So judgment connotations in this aspect of what's happening in the tabernacle. And then there is the throne. The cover of the ark with the 2 cherubs mounted over it was called kapuret. The entire thing is solid gold. And the rabbis tell us that there was an artificial light that hung between those angels on top of that to simulate the presence of God. They named it the Shekinah. And Christians have often talked about Shekinah, but never really understood that it didn't exist. It was not mentioned in the Bible, but rather rabbinic writings. I think that the rabbis had some insight into that glory of God. And that comes from what we see in Isaiah and some of these other books describing God's throne. This idea of Yahweh on his throne is depicted in three major prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, but each one of them providing a different perspective on the throne of God. For instance, Daniel provides us a temporal paradigm about the throne of God, how it impacts time, not just Shabbat time or Yom Kippur time, but all time, historical time, cosmic time, and so on. In Ezekiel, we get a spatial paradigm. This is the most detailed description of God's physical throne. What surprises most of us is that that throne of God is like some ancient palanquin full of light and glory, angels circling around it. It sits on a plate. It is totally portable and it moves around. It doesn't stay in one place. An amazing piece of description, which many Christians have not taken seriously enough. So we don't understand that God is not sitting in one room, but rather he is everywhere. And then, of course, Isaiah provides us the experiential paradigm. What happens when you are in the presence of God? The sense of doom that arises, accompanied by the sense of awe and renewal that appears. The energy phenomena that accompany the throne of God appear in all these visions. We call them theophanies. The first of those, of course, was Moses with the burning bush experience. You have fire, lightning, thunder, light, cloud, smoke, glory, earthquake. All these are associated with the throne room of God, both in John's Revelation visions and throughout the New Testament.